I've been driving trucks for a long time, crossing state lines and navigating more highways than I can even count. I've seen a lot of stuff out there, mostly at night when the roads are quiet and the world feels like it's slipping into some kind of other place, especially in the Southwest. There's something about the desert that's just different. The emptiness, the sky stretching out forever, the way the wind seems to carry whispers. I can't explain it, but it's a different kind of place. I've seen people out there too, weird figures just standing in the desert, looking lost or maybe just watching. Sometimes I swear I saw things moving in the shadows, things that shouldn't be moving. Once I even saw a line of people crawling on their hands and knees along the road, a whole procession of them stretching out for what felt like miles. That was strange, yeah, but none of it compares to what happened that morning near the border, the morning that changed everything for me. This happened around 2010. I was running a route along the southwestern border, hugging Mexico for a good 100 miles. This stretch wasn't exactly peaceful. Cartel activity was rampant, and any driver making this route knew the risks. You didn't go in blind. Most of us used the CB radio to keep each other posted on what was going on ahead, sometimes even mile by mile, sharing warnings if things got hot or if there was anything unusual. It was like a little network of survival. Usually it was quiet, just static and long stretches of nothing. But there have been a few times when drivers caught sight of suspicious activity. A couple of trucks with their lights off following way too close, cars speeding without headlights, or even the occasional shootout that you hear about secondhand. But on that night in particular, everything had been pretty still. I wasn't even listening to the radio. I'd made this drive so many times by then that I'd stopped even thinking about it. It was just another route on another night. I had my usual pullouts that I liked to use, spots off the radar where I could rest up without drawing too much attention. Not exactly legal parking, but when you're dealing with potential cartel activity, you want to be invisible. This one spot I liked was off a dirt road, down a wash between a couple of old peeling billboards, and then into a gully where the truck could fit just right, hidden completely from the highway. It was Arizona, middle of nowhere, the stars bright overhead. A perfect place to grab some sleep. I pulled in, shut the engine down, ate a quick dinner out of the cooler. The air was still, the night quiet except for the occasional breeze rustling through the desert. I watched the stars for a bit, let my mind drift, then climbed into the bunk and settled down for the night. I must have fallen asleep watching a movie because the next thing I remember, I was being jolted awake by a loud thud. Something had hit my truck, hard. I sat up, blinking in the darkness, and just listened. There were footsteps outside. I moved to the front, slid into the driver's seat, and peered out through the windshield. It was dark, too dark to see anything but vague shapes outside. Then the footsteps stopped, and I just sat there, holding my breath, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The desert went quiet again. I told myself it was probably an animal, a coyote maybe. Then I climbed back into the bunk. I was about to drift off again, and that's when I heard it. A scream. It sounded like it came way out in the desert, really far off. It was a long, drawn-out scream, like somebody was in real trouble. Then I heard another, and another. It was almost like it was coming closer each time, like whoever or whatever was out there was slowly moving toward me. I sat up again, heart pounding, and listened. After the screams, I heard voices, too many to count. They were all overlapping, talking over one another. I couldn't make out any of the words. They were far away, distorted by the wind or just the sheer emptiness of the desert. But the tone of them, it sounded desperate, begging even. And then, as suddenly as it all started, it stopped. And somehow that silence afterward was worse, somehow like the desert had just swallowed everything up. I don't know why I did it, but I reached up and flipped on the high beams, flashing them 3 times into the night. Maybe I thought it would help whoever was out there find their way. Maybe it was just instinct. The lights cut through the darkness, but I couldn't see anything, just the empty desert stretching out in front of me. I reached for my CB, heart still racing, and called out to anybody nearby. After a few seconds of static, a voice crackled back to me. "Yeah, I hear you. You the driver? See anything out there?" "No," I replied, "but I heard something. Screaming. People. It sounds like they're in trouble." The other driver was quiet for just a moment, and then, in a low voice, he responded, "You want to just stay put, friend? I just got shot at by some freaking driving without headlights. Barely made it out myself. There's cars racing up and down the highway like they're looking for something, or someone. Stay hidden. Whatever you heard, it ain't good." That definitely wasn't what I wanted to hear. "Thanks for the heads up," I said, but I was already feeling that gnawing dread deep in my gut. I signed off and sat there for a few minutes, listening, but the night had gone dead quiet again. Eventually, I climbed back into my bunk, but sleep did not come easy. My mind kept replaying those screams, those voices, the eerie silence that followed them. Something was not right out there, and I didn't want to be around for when it found me. Morning came early, and I wasted no time getting ready to leave. I wanted to be on the road and far away from that spot as quickly as possible. I did my usual pre-drive checks, running through the motions, but when I stepped out of the cab, the first thing that I saw stopped me cold. There, about 20 feet from the truck, was a puddle of dark blood soaking into the sand. It was a big one, the kind that told you something bad had happened out here. My first thought, obviously, was an animal. A coyote or some other poor beast that had gotten caught in a fight during the night. But then I remembered those screams. I walked over to the blood, crouching down to get a better look. There were no tracks around it, no signs of any animals, just blood. I straightened up, feeling a cold sweat prickling at my skin. I did a really quick sweep of the truck. Everything seemed to be in order, no damage, nothing missing. So I climbed back into the cab, started up my engine, and backed the rig out of the gully and back onto the dirt road. And that's when I saw the clothes. At first, I didn't really register what they were. Just a few scraps of fabric lying in the dust, like somebody had just tossed them out of a moving vehicle. But as I drove further, I started to see more of them. Shirts, pants, shoes, all scattered along the road. Then there was more blood, a few more pools of it streaking across the ground, splattered on rocks and bushes. And then I saw a body, or at least what was left of one. Hands, feet, scalps, pieces of torso, all mixed in with the clothing, like somebody had ripped these people apart and then just scattered them like garbage. That's when the smell hit me, thick and sickening, a mix of blood and rot. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding and my hand shaking on the wheel. I did not want to keep going. I did not want to see more, but I had no choice. I had to get out of there. I grabbed the CB and called out for help, my voice cracking and barely steady enough to speak. A few other drivers responded pretty quickly. All of them sounded as spooked as I was. "There's something going on out here," one of them said. "A lot of people got hit last night. It's all over the news. Some kind of execution, cartel. They're calling it the Mother's Day Massacre." My stomach churned. I'd heard stories about cartel executions, but this was something else, something worse. I put the truck back in gear and just drove, not looking back, not wanting to see any more of what lay behind me. But the things that I saw, those images, they stayed with me, burned into my mind. The blood, the bodies, the screams in the night. Then something else hit me. Something I hadn't noticed until I made it a good 20 miles down the highway. It wasn't just the bodies, the blood, or even the clothing. It was that silence. From the moment I'd seen those first remains, I hadn't heard a single bird, not a single insect, not even wind brushing through the cacti. The desert was deathly still, as though the land itself was holding its breath, watching and waiting. The CB crackled to life again, and a voice I didn't recognize this time called out, "This is Jawbreaker. You still out there? Did you see him?" I didn't answer. I've been a trucker for most of my life, and while the long hauls are what keep the lights on and the fridge stocked, I don't mind picking up the occasional short run if the price is right. It's not like these jobs are glamorous, hell, none of them are, but there's something to be said about hitting the open road for a few hours and getting paid more than you would for a whole day's drive. About 6 months ago, I stumbled onto one of these jobs, these quick hauls in a valley community that I barely knew much about. The pay was high, unusually high for such a short run, but I didn't ask too many questions. A trucker learns to keep his head down and his mouth shut, especially when the job's paying better than it should. The first few times it was pretty simple stuff. Raw materials, steel beams, concrete blocks, big bags of gravel, that kind of thing. Always from one end of the sprawling valley to the other. The valley itself wasn't much to look at. Just rolling hills covered in dry grass, a few scattered farms, a lot of nothing in between. The towns were small, just rambling communities of a few thousand here and there, so I didn't really spend much time in those areas. I'd show up, grab the trailer, then haul it over to some drop-off lot in McGuire and call it good. Easy money, no hassle. Over time, I got used to that work and started learning the routes. Even though I was still doing my regular long hauls on the side, these short hauls were just a good way to fill in the gaps. You know, keep things steady when the big jobs weren't always coming in. One morning, I got a request that was a little different from the others. The email came through like it always did, brief to the point and a little vague. This time, though, the instructions were a bit off. The pickup location wasn't your typical warehouse or even a yard. No, this was remote. Unorthodox was the word they used. The whole haul would be off the grid, they said. No paved roads except for getting out of town. That should have been my first red flag. No name was attached to the request either, just coordinates to where I'd find the trailer. Normally, I'd pass on something that sketchy, but the payout was too good to ignore. Probably some rich local farm out in the boonies that didn't feel like playing by the rules, you know? I've dealt with those types before. Big money, no patience, and a sense of entitlement that made them think they were above the paperwork and formalities. Sometimes, even above the law. I started thinking that anything could be inside this trailer. Guns, money, drugs. The next day, I loaded up my rig and headed out. I followed those vague instructions I'd been given. The sun was starting to rise, and I had that peaceful feeling you get when the road's all yours. Just you and the hum of the engine cutting through the morning mist. The instructions led me out of town, a mile down the county highway, before telling me to pull off into this dusty turnout on the side of the road. Sure enough, there was a trailer sitting there. No lock, no guard, not even a chain to keep somebody from towing it off in the middle of the night. It was just sitting there in the dirt like a forgotten piece of junk. I gave it a once-over, checked the tires, and made sure everything was intact. The trailer was clean, well-maintained, but that really only added to the weirdness of it all. I've hauled enough rigs to know when something feels off, and this felt off. It was intact, undisturbed, and properly handled, so I had no problem hooking it up to my rig and turning it around. The trailer needed to be hauled back through town, where I'd drop it off on the other side. Seemed simple enough. The weirdest part? This trailer had 0 markings, which was very odd. As I pulled out onto the highway, though, something was gnawing at the back of my mind. All the farms were on this side of town, not the other. It didn't make sense. What could I possibly be hauling through town and away from the farmlands? It wasn't like I was delivering to a factory or a warehouse on the other side. Hell, there wasn't much of anything out that way except for some old mining roads that hadn't seen traffic in years. I scratched my head, running through the possibilities. Maybe it was some kind of black market deal, illegal goods or stolen property. Or maybe I was just overthinking it all. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fishy. The directions led me straight through the heart of town, past those old brick buildings and tired storefronts that looked like they hadn't changed in decades. People were milling about, walking their dogs, grabbing their morning coffee, completely oblivious to the fact that I might be hauling something illegal right in the middle of their quiet little community. The thought of that made my stomach turn, but there wasn't much I could do. Just follow directions at this point. It was then that I realized I could be hauling toxic waste of some kind, maybe even something nuclear. This whole town could be in jeopardy if I made one little mistake. On the other side of town, I picked up an old mining road, just like the instructions said. The further I drove, the worse I felt. The road was narrow, winding through dense trees and rocky hills, the kind of place that made you question whether you were really going the right way. I hadn't seen a single car since I left town, and there was no cell service out here. So if something did go wrong, I'd be on my own. No number to call, no one to ask for help. Just me, my rig, and this damn trailer. The instructions said to look out for a pullout marked with orange cones, and sure enough, after a few miles, I spotted them. The pullout was wide enough for me to offload the trailer without any trouble, and there wasn't a soul in sight. No buildings, no cars, nothing. Just trees and dirt as far as I could see. I pulled that rig in, parked, and got out to unhook the trailer. As I walked around the back of the rig, I noticed the trailer was unlocked. No padlock, no seal, nothing. Now that was unusual. Most loads were locked up tight, even for short hauls. Curiosity got the better of me. I figured I'd take a quick peek inside. After all, if I was hauling something illegal, I had the right to know, didn't I? I swung the doors open and immediately regretted it. That stench hit me like a punch to the gut. Some kind of rotting meat, thick and rancid. I gagged, covering my mouth with my sleeve as I looked inside. The trailer was packed full of meat, raw cuts, slabs of beef, pork, even poultry, all stacked haphazardly on metal racks. This wasn't a refrigerated trailer, though. That meat was spoiling, oozing blood and fat onto the floor in thick, greasy puddles. I slammed the door shut, my stomach turning over as the image burned itself into my brain. What the hell was this? The smell lingered in my nostrils as I unhooked the trailer and climbed back into the cab. I sat there for a minute, hands shaking on the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what was going on. Why would anybody haul meat like that, knowing it would spoil within hours? And why here in the middle of nowhere, where nobody could possibly pick it up in time? None of it made sense. I drove back the way I came, trying to push the whole thing out of my mind. By the time I got back into town, I'd convinced myself that it was somebody else's problem now. I did my job. I delivered the trailer. I got paid. End of story. But that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it all. The smell, the meat, the weird instructions. Something about it all was just wrong. Like I was missing a piece of a puzzle. The next day, I checked my bank account, and sure enough, the payment had gone through. but it wasn't from some local farmer or business. No, it was from a government account. That's when the unease really started to set in. Why would the government be paying me for a haul like that? What the hell were they doing with a trailer full of rotting meat out in the middle of nowhere? I couldn't let it go. I had to know what happened to that trailer, what I'd really been hauling. I grabbed my truck, my normal Chevy, and drove out to where that pullout was, where I'd left it. The cones were still there, but the trailer was gone. I climbed out and walked around. I found some tracks, deep tire marks in the dirt, leading away from the pullout and back into the woods. Somebody had come for that trailer, but they hadn't come from town. They'd come from deeper inside the wilderness. I followed those tracks as far as I could, winding through the trees and rocky terrain until I came to an old abandoned mine entrance. The tracks led straight into the mine, into the darkness where no truck should ever be able to go. My heart was pounding in my chest as I stood there, staring into that jagged black hole, mind racing with all kinds of possibilities. Whatever was going on here, it wasn't something I wanted to be a part of anymore. I turned around, got back in my truck, and drove away without looking back once. That was the last short haul I ever took in that valley. To this day, I still wonder what I was really hauling that morning. Or more importantly, why.